Al, could you comment on your experiences and knowledge about our government remote viewing program? There's been many people who have talked about remote viewing, and in fact, all of the ones who have been on the radio programs have said effectively it died several years ago. I've heard Ingo Swann and Joe McMoneagle and Major Ed Dames, just three of many people on radio talk shows who comment about remote viewing and various different ways of doing remote viewing, from technical coordinate remote viewing to actual, I guess, transposing of their soul essence to a location. I don't know what that's called. But give us your comments, Al.
Well, I will say first, it's not dead. It's very much alive and well, regardless of who protests and says that the programs have died. They didn't die. They haven't. The first program was, should we say, brought online back about 1940 with the Psych Corps, and many other programs have come into being since then, under pure military control and some not under pure military control. I don't know whether NASA has ever tried a program of their own. That I'm not aware of. But all of those I've heard of are under military control of one kind or another. Army, not Navy so much, but primarily the Army and perhaps Air Force. Much of the remote viewing, actually, is done more by the Army than any other military group. They all tend to spin off and do their own thing afterwards. But much of the heavy work was done there. Dames was involved with it. Skip Atwater was in charge of the programs for the Army, and of course he wound up working with the Monroe Institute. And when he retired from the Army in 1993, he became the technical director of the Monroe Institute. And then, of course, Bob Monroe, I believe, died in 95, if I remember correctly. But all of these people have at one time or another made some comment on remote viewing. There are others in the literature that have turned up who have taught remote viewing in the past and are still doing it now. There's one of them still doing it as a commercial aspect for people who are interested.
Well, several of them are, actually.
One of the very prominent ones that was part of the military program is now doing it. And none of them say that the program is dead, nor the abilities to do these things have died. They certainly haven't. So to say that the programs have died is ridiculous. It's just more the government disinformation. They don't want the public to know how thoroughly the government has gone into these military and civilian governments both.
Well, actually, it's the Ingo Swans and Joe McMonagles and Major Ed Dames. They all say that the programs are dead in our government. They're the ones who are saying that it's, and perhaps from their perspective, from what they know, it is dead. Certainly, they're out of it, so they're not in the know of what's going on today.
They may well be out of it themselves. That doesn't mean the program's dead.
Have you had any sort of indications that the program continues from people that you know?
Well, I know the Psych Corps hasn't shut down.
No, what is Psych Corps?
Psych Corps was a group founded in 1940. Basically, Psych Corps meant Psychic Corps, in which a group of psychics were commissioned and the initial testing to see whether or not they could find out what happened to a group of aliens, extraterrestrials, who were, for a brief period of time, were working with our government and our military.
Were they commissioned by our government, specifically what branch?
It's a very strange, loose-knit commission, if you will. It came up as almost a challenge. When 1939, 1940, they couldn't locate this specific group of aliens who had been working with the government and then suddenly said, well, there's nothing more we can do for you, and disappeared into the woodwork, most literally. And none of our intelligence operations could locate them. Therefore, Harry Bennett, who was through the 40s, was the principal advisor to President Roosevelt, had some interest in the metaphysical side of things, and so did Roosevelt for that matter. And some people made the suggestion, officially, you might say, as well as unofficially, to Harry Bennett, well, if you can't find these guys, why don't you go out and hire a bunch of psychics? Maybe they can. So he thought it was a good idea. Roosevelt approved, so they literally set up a test program, hired some, commercially, if you will, and in secret had them see if they could locate this group of missing aliens. Now, I don't know for a fact whether or not they ever located them as such, but the program proved sufficiently productive that they decided to make it a permanent thing. So that was when the Psych Corps came into being, with its own director and its own schooling system and its own set of protocols, to find people who were suited to this type of program, who had the initial innate ability, and then train them. It was a 5 years hands-on training program after they got it set up. And they became part of an operation operating within the confines of our government. Through what department, I don't know. But they set up their administrative headquarters right outside of Trenton, New Jersey. And that was where they functioned from. And they served many different functions for the military. One of them, of course, there's been a lot of wild speculation, and some of it is not so wild, in that they could, by remote viewing, find out what somebody had in their filing cabinet 3,000 miles away, 10,000 miles away, whether it was an unfriendly government or whether it was somebody else. They wanted to know what they had on file. And literally, they could go in and go through that filing cabinet remotely and see page by page what was in that filing cabinet. That's how good they were, and report back exactly what they saw.
What sort of technique did they use to do this?
I can't answer that because I never got involved in that. I know one person who used to do it. I know him today, and he can still do it, of course. He's out of the government service, but he can still do it. He mentioned the technique to me once, and it takes a series of exercises of relaxation, and you have to know how to, shall we say, deal with matter in the sense that I think it would be correct to say you are dealing with it from another level of reality rather than directly like this book and these pages in front of me. You deal with this as a physical reality, and you open the book and turn the pages. Well, there's apparently a way of opening the book, so to speak, and turning the pages psychically from another reality and read every page, even though it's bound together and crammed in a filing cabinet.
So they
I don't know
wouldn't-
precisely how they do it, but
Okay.
I know the guys are telling me they can do it, and they have named the technique, which means nothing to me.
Do you recall the name of the technique?
No, I do not at this point.
Okay. Okay, so this is a different organization than the ones which is public. You know, the guys
this
who were
one
in
is
the
not-
Army.
This one is not
is not.
public, and
Okay.
the ones that are in work and usage for the military in this respect, and also for the CIA, who denies it, of course, these are non-public. They are highly secreted. These people are recruited and held in secret, paid in secret. Whether they're held in confinement or not, I don't know. I rather doubt it. They have to allow them some freedom of motion. And some of them are family men. Psych Corps were never family men. Psych Corps were always single individuals, whether it's male or female. Now, some of the other psychics the government has used, of course, can be family people because there's no restriction against them getting married and having a family, just that their abilities shall be available to the government service at any time they want them.
Now, you said that you have some of these skills
Yes.
yourself.
Yeah.
And, however, no recollection of
How they came to be.
how they came to be.
Exactly. It was just like one day they were full blown, and I do not know whether somebody flipped a switch or I went through a training program, and the recall perhaps of these abilities was like flipping a switch. They might have been used for a while and turned off. I'm speculating, I don't know. But in any case, one day it seemed that the ability was there, full blown, and it's been that way ever since.
About how long ago was that, Al?
Let's see, this would be talking about 40 years ago, in the 60s.
And when you remote view, describe the process that you go through.
There is no process, so far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
I mean, I can be sitting here next to you on this table,
Mm-hmm.
if I want to remote view something on the other side of this planet. I can do it. The only thing is I have to relax enough and not have my concentration distracted by something else like I'm doing right now, talking to you and recording this program, so to speak. It works best when I am alone. It does not require that I be alone. But my techniques are perhaps different than anyone else's. And as one of the best remote viewers in the service now out of it has said, you taught the class that I went to. He says, you were the best. And I'm quoting him. That's not my words. So I was not aware, and I'm still not aware that I ever taught the class. This is maybe another one of the buried areas of what I've done in the government service, which I know there are still buried areas that I have not resurrected, if you will. It takes the right trigger, the right sequence of events to bring it back. Once it's brought back, it stays.
So it's a matter for you of just getting quiet and pointing your attention
exactly
to whatever it is you intend to remote view. It could be that submarine that went down.
Yes.
The Russian submarine. It could be.
I did do that one, by the way.
Well, that'd be good. Sort of take our listeners through sort of what do you see, what do you feel during that process, and describe it for the submarine.
Well, from what I saw of it, and of course it's required going back in time to review the whole incident, if you will.
So you can go forward and back in time?
You can do either. Change your physical location, so to speak, and review it. View, in this case view what happened from the standpoint of looking at it as it occurred. And as what I saw of it, the submarine was rammed by a somewhat larger ship, apparently a submersible, and what appeared was not ours. In other words, it was not Russian Navy, British, American Navy. Wasn't a Navy object at all. It was hard to say whose it was, but it apparently ruptured the forward hull of the ship and caused a massive leakage. They had to seal off that first quarter. Then as it settled down and went down rather rapidly, not so fast at first, but when it started going down, they lost the back quarter. It was not struck in the back half or the back quarter section. They lost the rear quarter section of the ship, so half of the ship was literally flooded. And those who survived were in the central section. It went down fast then, and they were stuck on the bottom. They did, because there is a special crew, not only in the Russian navies, but I'm sure in all of the navies, if they have a major accident at sea with a submarine, and it's a nuclear, as that was, they have orders from a certain group. They ought to shut down the nuclear reactor regardless of what or who may try to oppose them. I mean, they have orders shoot to kill if necessary. They must shut the reactor down because at that point their orders are concerned with not the survivability of the crew, but that there not be a nuclear accident which could affect the rest of the Earth. So their orders are very strict. They shut that thing down, regardless of the consequences to everyone else in the sub.
Well, were you able to actually remote view the object that rammed it? Were you able to get any more information on that?
Only that it was very large, it was very strong, it was larger than the sub, and was not something we built, and apparently came from one of the undersea civilizations. That's all I could guess on that, surmise on that. I'm half guessing, half surmise. I don't know whose it was, but it was not something we built on the surface.
So, but if you wanted to, given your techniques, could you actually go back and do gather more data on that object, or would certain things be blocked to you?
I don't know whether things be blocked to me or not. I didn't try to pursue the matter of what was the object and whose was it very far. I probably could pursue it, but I did not do so at the time.
Okay. I would just imagine if we all had this capability, and I think we all have it.
It's inherent in everyone.
Right. We would have a world with no secrets, wouldn't we?
Very true. And this is one of the aspects of our civilization at the present time, and it has been for thousands of years. There are those who wish to know all the secrets, and those who wish to know all the secrets want to make sure that nobody else acquires them without their permission, if you will, i.e. an elite group on top, if you will, who know all the secrets, and everyone down below should be held in ignorance. And the techniques for keeping average John Q. public, whether it's in the last few thousand years or today in ignorance, is you do not allow them to develop these psychic abilities without keeping them under some kind of guard or control. There are exceptions, of course. People break through anyway. But the educational system doesn't allow that these things can happen. The educational system also, in the terms of the religious viewpoint, says that this is a no-no, this is the work of the devil. You don't go into that area, or you will wind up burning in the fires of hell forever. I mean,
that is anything psychic.
Fear,
yes,
anything psychic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fear technique that they use to keep the human being from developing the capabilities of the human mind. There are those, of course, that don't fall for this, and they go ahead and develop it anyway. But this is the way they keep the vast majority in check.
So, I mean, the techniques that you use, could you teach those to somebody, or?
They probably could be, yes. Others do this. They teach their techniques, whether it be a standardized technique
mm-hmm.
or their own particular individual techniques. These techniques can be taught. Just as another example, as I've heard, people can be taught how to bilocate physically without hardware, or even for that matter to time travel without hardware. Time travel either mentally or actually physically. I've heard these stories. I don't.
Have you ever bilocated?
No.
Okay.
And neither have I time traveled physically.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it mentally, but doing it in a physical sense without the usual hardware, which our government groups have, no.
You've not time traveled physically without hardware?
No,
okay.
no, it's always required very
But you have
hardware.
time traveled physically?
Yes, with the hardware, of course, being available.
So there's all sorts of techniques out there. What you're saying is probably there are a lot of people that know how to do it. Right. They're doing it for their own advantage.
The limitations on this is basically what kind of limits do you put on your own mind,
or have placed on them, which you readily accepted.
That you accept or have had rammed down your throat, as the case may be. Historically, it's been rammed down everybody's throat by means of religion. Today, that's not as nearly as effective as it once was, so now there are other techniques to keep people in ignorance. Diversionary tactics, disinformation, allow a full-blown civilization such as we have today to go ahead and play things scientifically, but guide that direction of scientific development as well as the metaphysical development, and make sure it doesn't get too far too fast, and that somebody keeps herd on it and keeps right on it.
Have there been any other very interesting remote control or remote viewing experiences that you personally have?
Well, right at this moment, I don't remember any specifically, but I'm sure there have been.
Do you not use the technique too often?
No, I don't use it every day.
Just the every now and then, right? Okay.
Quite literally, the every now and then.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll end it with that. Thanks, Al.